Welcome to another episode of Free Range American here at the Total Archery Challenge in Big Sky, Montana, with the one, the only Jack Carr.
Back for episode number 2.
I know. I feel so honored.
I know. It's awesome
It's
to
so
not
cool.
do it through
Skype.
the internet.
That's
you
right.
know?
Last time you guys were in isolation in Texas,
Yep.
I think. So we did it remotely. But it looked like you were having a good time out there.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is always a good time, obviously, because
Shooting some things, blowing some stuff up.
correct. And plus, Matt's there, JT's there, Logan, everybody's there. So
Yeah.
we're all there at the same time. It's fantastic.
And did you see John Stossel posted a thing? There's a new book out there, and I forget the author's name, but she did a bunch of research into all the other taxes that you pay other
Yes.
than the percentage bracket
Yes.
that you're in. It was awesome.
It's-
I mean, we
it
all
was-
know it. But
crazy.
every single thing,
Yes.
essentially, that you do. So you're paying
And it's a big
way
system
more.
of circle of fucking taxes that you just keep paying. You know,
Keep paying.
you're taxed on your income, you're taxed on your sales, you're taxed on your property, you're tax,
Hotels,
everything.
every single thing.
everything.
Mhm.
But it doesn't surprise me, because if we look at who's making decisions on budgets, we look at our elected officials, they are the biggest group of fucking idiots, I think, in recorded history.
You may be right.
I think so.
It's
I think
definitely
they are
not
the-
drawing someone that is, entrepreneurial
No.
and is driven, and it's someone that's like, how can I use this to benefit myself, my family, and my constituents, to keep me up there, to keep me
Right.
benefiting myself and my family. Like, it's disgusting, which gives me a lot of material to work with, because
Right.
it's very easy to make a politician a bad guy in my novels,
Well,
because they are,
I
for
mean,
the most
they're-
part,
they're
it seems like
super
not good people.
there are super easy things that we can change, and we don't need to get into a crazy political rant, but a little bit here, which is, if you're writing legislation or submitting legislation, and a good example, we'll just talk about the industry for just a second, because I think this is something we could all kind of like,
I know what rabbit hole
we
we're
can
about
all
to go
talk
down.
about this for a minute, but it's like, okay, so if my election is funded by a super PAC, I go into Congress or Senate, whatever it is, and I start submitting and writing legislation, but that super PAC is funded by the pharmaceutical industry. And then I cannot be prosecuted for insider trading, like any executive in corporate America or in the banking industry would be fucking taken to task over these things. However, our elected officials can't. To me, I think of this is super easy on a level of, if my election was funded by the pharmaceutical industry, my research is funded by the pharmaceutical industry, and this pissed me off as well, which is the American taxpayer is also paying for research and patents that we don't enforce, that pharmaceutical companies can then turn around and directly profit from the research that we funded as taxpayers. Right. And by the way, this is something that fucking crazy Democrats and the crazy Republicans can both agree on. When you get into politics, you should not leave politics wealthier than when you enter that.
And that's what we have right now.
And that's what we have right now.
The people making the laws are above the law.
Correct.
That is
there's
so
a class
fundamentally wrong as a society. It has to change.
Yeah.
I think that, how do you take money out of politics? Right? It's that super complex conversation that we've been trying to do for I don't know how long. I mean, campaign finance reform, like, holy shit, that's been a debate as long as I've been alive. And
when they throw many things into those bills that have nothing to do with actual campaign finance reform, which makes other people then vote against them, even if the title of the bill sounds good and maybe has some good things in it. It's just so crazy. I mean, I can't imagine I would never want to go into politics. I couldn't do it. I look at the last 20 years of my life in the military as that was my service, and then looking at politics, because I get asked all the time about going into politics. And the answer is an easy one. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No
Well, I
way.
think that's the answer for any fairly intelligent individual. And this came up on the Rogan podcast when he was talking to Eric Weinstein, and he threw out something that is unique and we don't have in our system. Like, we need but goes back to our first president. You know, Washington didn't want to be president.
Didn't want to be king. He could have been a king.
Yeah, he didn't want to be king yet.
But he was
No.
basically forced into this role. And I think, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, is are we at that point? Should we be doing that? We're basically like, hey, you're up. Like, we need somebody good in here. We're drafting you. You have to say yes.
I think there's still something to that with term limits, with people that aren't career politicians. I mean, the career politics has just absolutely corrupted the entire system. And, you know, people say it all the time. It's like, hey, I don't want to see the president's taxes, someone who enters politics very rich and maybe loses a little bit of money. I want to see the tax returns of people who entered politics without so much money and left multi-millionaires.
Well, the Pelosi
Exactly.
empire is a perfect example of that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Where, you know, I think her nephew is the governor, right? Gavin Newsom is the governor or the
Are
mayor.
they
or
related
something.
somehow?
Yeah, they are.
He's California.
I mean,
governor.
it is an absolute nightmare. I think when we look at the entire ethics and what I think there should be a separate investigative authority that looks into politics all the time, and they should be part of, essentially, they only answer to the people. And if you had a bunch of professional investigators that were only investigating campaign finance and campaign all the time. So every politician and every president that goes through office, I think they should have to withstand the same type of scrutiny that President Trump did with the Mueller investigation. It's like, that's great. So you've been elected to president. Now we're going to spend the next 18 months digging into every aspect of your entire fucking campaign, and we're going to publish it. We're going to publish it in a long report to everybody in the United States as to exactly what the fuck you did during your campaign. Because the other thing that I've thought about is that no president in American history has ever withstood the amount of the investigation and oversight into their campaign to Russiagate than the Trump campaign did. And I haven't, waved the banner for Trump. Like I openly say, I really wish he would fucking dial back on his tweets. And I think that there's a significant amount of, I think there's some things that we could definitely change as far as the information is concerned and how we're presenting information. But boy, I'll tell you, man, no campaign has ever, and nor would they. There's no fucking way the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, if we even went back to Bush 1, those guys would not have survived. They just wouldn't have survived that level of scrutiny. There's just no fucking way.
No, I think that's a great idea. Like the law enforcement has internal affairs to investigate stuff like that. Why wouldn't we have a system like that within our?
That all they do is just investigate politicians. That's all they do. And they should be. We should be, as a people, we should be really interested to know what the fuck you guys are up to. And they should answer only to the people, and they should just publish information just on a regular cadence, to just fucking publish this open source information. Now that's a taxpayer initiative I could get behind. Yeah. I could get that. Just investigate every one of these guys. Hell, there's convicted felons that are,
there's a few.
There's a few. Did you ever read that report where they were talking about how many
DUIs and all that stuff?
Gosh,
oh my gosh.
These guys are scumbags. You look at that Beto O'Rourke or whatever the fuck his name is. Look at that guy. He's just a fake person. He's just outside of the fact that I think he's a absolute fucking clown. But
the other side of all that, though, is that there is so much information readily available today from every email, text, tweet, where you can pick and choose single sentences out there to to kind of morph it into something that you want it to be and distract. So there is that side of it too, and that makes it so easy to take something either out of context or maybe in context, put it together with something else, and then just create a narrative that has no basis in fact, because you created it essentially by picking words, picking sentences out of a person's story to create this just distraction that you want. So it's crazy, especially with all the information out there today, so readily available. And then when you investigate it and get into somebody's emails and pick and choose these things. It's crazy.
Well, and
But
what
who
they
would want to
did,
go into that? Like, who would want to go into politics?
I don't
Just like,
know.
who would want to be a police officer right now?
Right.
Like, who's like, man, I cannot wait to
can't wait
graduate
to
high
get in the
school or
force.
graduate college or whatever, and I cannot wait to go and serve as a police officer in LA and New York and Seattle, wherever else, my hometown, wherever it is. Like, who is wanting to do that right now?
I don't know.
I don't
No
think
one.
I'm not quite
people
done with. I'm not quite done with Flynn though. Not quite done with saying something about the like what they did to General Flynn was a complete one. It was completely unethical.
I don't know that I heard about this.
Oh, I mean, they investigated obviously in RussiaGate when they
It's 4 years of his life.
deleted. I
Boom.
mean, the guy was teed up from the beginning. I mean, the Bureau basically fabricated a bunch of bullshit. They didn't document they had a bunch of handwritten notes from their interviews. It was just a sloppy, big fucking mess. And where is the Bureau just being eviscerated from the top?
Yeah.
Like they should be just firing everybody for not following protocol. But I haven't seen that. Have you seen it? Have we seen mass termination in some of these
Nope.
organizations? No, we didn't see it in Benghazi. We didn't see it in this. Like these professional bureaucrats that are adhering to a specific political party and not adhering to the people, these guys need to be gutted. They need to be taken completely out of our government system. They do. Because General Flynn, I mean, and I didn't read the Mueller Report. I listened to the Mueller Report. It's like 23 hours long. I listened to it in different segments. And, you know, I've heard a wide variety of things about the report, you know, how inflammatory it was and how, you know, they could piece together. And basically they had nothing from the beginning and they finished with basically nothing. And there was a bunch of speculation as to what conversations had taken place behind closed doors that they couldn't track. I'm like, man, you guys are really pulling some shit out of thin air. Like in saying that we're going to delay, can Russia delay any actions towards America until the new administration comes in? That's not illegal. That's actually standard for every incoming administration or possible administration to have some type of open dialogue with a foreign country. It is standard, as far as I know. Every president that has a possibility of becoming president, even in the prelims, has had some type of open dialogue with some ambassador or somebody from another foreign country. It's not as if they're doing closed door meetings and deciding what exactly they're going to do. But it just seems a little bit fucking crazy to me that we spent so many years with RussiaGate and we really didn't pull up anything. There was no smoking gun.
Nothing.
Nothing.
And if I had written that, let's say I started writing books instead of in 2018, it was 2005,
Right.
2000, 1995. If I had written about this as fiction, no one would have believed it.
Oh, no.
Like you can
It'd been
suspend
too much.
disbelief for one thing in a novel. Like you can ask that reader to believe you or to come along with you for one suspension of disbelief. But once you start stringing them together, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you lose the reader.
Like what?
But you can get one. You can get away with one, and that's
Yeah.
fun because it's fiction. It's not real, and it takes people out. But have you read? I written this in 2005 or 1995 or something. No one would have believed it. That would have been suspension of disbelief after suspension of disbelief
Yeah.
throughout the entire novel, and people would have been like, "This would never happen. That's not real." When in fact, look what we're dealing with today. Something that people wouldn't even believe it if it was fiction.
No.
15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Do you, as you're writing your fourth book right now, do you feel like the current events and what's going on is kind of changing like how you're writing and what you're including in your story a little bit?
Yeah, it certainly does, because fourth one comes out April 2021. So I have to think, as I'm writing it now, okay, if I'm talking about facial recognition technology, if someone's wearing a mask and they're required to wear a mask walking down the street, well, are we going to still have masks in April 2021 when this comes out, or is that
Right.
going to be gone? And I have to think
Right,
about that ahead of time now. So I'm kind of writing it in a way where people are thinking about how we've dealt with COVID, and that is something at the forefront of their thoughts as I'm moving into this next novel and working my way through it. But it is something that I think about, and I have the characters thinking back on this time in COVID, how we reacted as a country, what other countries learned by watching our reaction, particularly our enemies, and then how they can apply that in their battle plans to hit us when we're weak. So that's kind of the part of the theme. But those practical pieces, as far as, well, are people going to be wearing them on planes? Is there going to be social distancing? How does that work into the novel? Is the action going to be realistic if people have masks or not? And so it's tough to kind of figure out, but it's also fun. It also keeps me, I don't know, something else to just life. It's another thing to have to figure out and work through as I'm writing.
Yeah.
So your last novel, how did that do?
It did quite well. Thank you. Thanks to you guys.
Very
you guys
small
were
part.
Awesome. No, you guys were amazing. We did this podcast, Veterans React. We had the giveaways, and it was so awesome. So yeah, I made the New York Times list.
Savage Son.
Yeah.
Savage Son.
My favorite book, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the general
book.
consensus of all three, that it's people's favorite. Black Rifle Coffee, of course, is in all three, and hopefully we'll get it into the series with Chris Pratt too.
Yeah, Chris Pratt. So Amazon picked it up, right?
Amazon picked it up. So Chris got it first.
Okay.
So he optioned it, is how it works. So now he owns it, and then he gets to decide whether he wants to exercise that option and take it to the next level. And he put together the team. So Anton Fuqua, who did Training Day and Tears of the Sun and The Equalizer, Magnificent Seven. So they got together and they brought a writer in to do a pilot. And then I worked with the writer on that pilot episode. And then they took all three of them, took that pilot episode to Netflix, to Amazon, to Showtime, to all these different places, HBO and Apple. And then Amazon won. And Amazon has it. So it's an 8-part series right now on Amazon. And I think they're supposed to start filming in January of 2021. So Chris is fired up. It's so cool to be working on it. He wants to get all that. He wants to keep the realism, the authenticity, to keep it gritty, keep it violent, all those things. That's very important to him, because you have to change things a little bit when you're telling a story visually than you do if you're reading it. So, but I love the direction that it's going.
I'm so happy that you have the opportunity to be included on the writing process for the show, because that happens a lot in Hollywood, where somebody writes a script or they write a book and it gets adapted, but they don't really have any process, and then they're kind of upset in the whole output of it. So the fact that you're in there to make sure it stays authentic is really cool.
Yeah, no, I feel very fortunate. Usually they like to get rid of the author right away because they don't want him in the corner or her saying, you ruined my vision. That's not how this character would do this. Or why don't you have, they just kind of a pain. So for me, I've just been a student of this my whole life, just growing up, watching movies, reading books, noticing how they adapt books like First Blood book, First Blood movie, both very good, both very different. Or Presumed Innocent by Scott Turow, great book, also a great movie. And then you see some that don't work quite as well that are adapted. So I internalized those, knowing that hoping one day that I would be in this position. So when I talked to the team out there and I got to throw in all that history, and they were kind of like, oh, this isn't really the normal author who wants to just make sure that we take his work or her work and adapt it to the screen almost word for word or chapter by chapter. And that doesn't really work. But for me, understanding how the process works, being a student of it my entire life, being able to articulate that to them, they appreciated that. And Chris wanted me involved from the beginning, which was very cool. And it's a great team, because just like anything, those guys want to do fun stuff with guys that they like. Like, they don't want to bring in an actor or a director or a writer that's a pain. Like, they want to do stuff with cool guys. And so it's just like anything else. And so it's fun to be a part of that.
Yeah. So how much time is that going to take? So are you going to be on site during most of the filming?
I'm not sure. I don't ask too many questions because I'm just so happy to be here. I don't want to be the guy that's a pain. I'm just kind of like super happy. But the pilot script took a long time. Like, it took most of January, first week or so in February to get that thing dialed in, get it just right, so that Chris could take it and that those guys could go to those movie studios and talk to them about it and pitch it. So that took a lot of time. So we'll see when the other scripts start coming in. And so I'm advising on all those scripts, helping out with all of those. And then I'm an executive producer, which I'm not quite sure what that means. But as we go through this, I'll let you know.
Cool.
It does sound cool.
It's a good title to have under your belt. That's for damn sure.
So I think I'll be on I'll be on the set for some of it at least. And then, it'll be fun to work through like those fight scenes. That'll be awesome. I know Chris wants to get on the gun and get in shape and keep it so it looks like, so when guys like you see it, you're not like, God, God, why did he have his thumbs like that on that clock or whatever it was? What? Like, that's not how. And so he's very aware of that. He wants people with special operations backgrounds to watch it and be like, oh, this guy did the work. He cared about it enough to train, to take this thing so seriously and to knock it out of the park. So that's pretty cool too.
That would be bad. That would be badass to. What would be super cool is if we still happen to get like an invite to one of those things, Logan. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe like BRCC cameos.
Maybe like an invite would be super cool. I'm not.
Do you guys know anybody?
I don't know. If I know somebody,
let's do it. Yeah, we got to get out there because that's real. I mean, that's why I put it in the book. You know, that's why I put the watches made by veterans. I put the knives made by veterans. I put weave that stuff into the storyline because all that stuff tells you something about the character. Whether someone's drinking Starbucks or they're drinking Black Rifle coffee, that tells you something about that person. That helps develop their character. It helps move the story forward. Right. And I love to do it. And of course, I love to put stuff in from people that I like. So
it was super funny because I was like, you know, as I was reading and listening to it, you know, I could see how you're weaving different sections of this. And I think we talked about it. Maybe we didn't, but I've talked about it several times where the way that you're portraying different aspects of the agency. I've never actually had or read a fiction book, where people got different personalities correct, different departments, you know. So if you're talking about a certain division or department of the agency, who is this person? What type of person is this person, right? Who are they recruiting from? What are they doing? Who are they embedded and influenced with? And it's interesting because I read your book, and then Louis L'Amour did a book.
Last the Breed?
Yeah.
Awesome. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Someone just sent me a hardback first edition.
Seriously?
A fan did. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I'm so thankful. Yeah. Incredible.
So then I got that right after. So because I hadn't read that since I was probably, I don't know, like I was in high school or something like that.
Right.
And I was talking to Marty Scovelin, and I hit up Marty. I was like, hey, listen, Louis L'Amour is a veteran. Like a lot of people didn't realize that Louis L'Amour is a veteran. He's in World War II. It was like, you got to do a story on this guy because it's an iconic writer, like
nice,
super interesting background, especially his cadence to writing and things. Because I don't know how many books did he write? You read the story that we did.
Yeah,
we did a story on him on Coffee or Die, but it was the whole lead into this was I was reading one of your books and I forget which one it was. I was like, oh man. And then
probably True Believer. That is more like CIA type stuff. But they all do. But True Believer had it because I was embedded with those guys. I was the only military in this covert action program in 2006 in Baghdad. And that's where the inspiration for the second novel came from. And one of my relationships with one of the Iraqi Ministry of the Interior guys that I was working with, and he became a character in the novel. So it was all inspired from that time. And those guys really took care of me. And they were all, you know, the contractor guys were all former Delta, former SEALs, whatever else. And they kind of took me under their wing and taught me some of the ropes. And I had one of my best experiences of my time in uniform, even though I didn't have a uniform on. I had long hair like this. I had the beard, you know, I loved it. So it was great for me because that's kind of what I gravitate towards naturally, just not being kind of in line with everybody else. And I loved it. So it was probably True Believer. But the fourth one has a lot in it too. This fourth one that I'm working on, it has because James Reese, the protagonist, has to make a decision with what he wants to do. Is he an assassin? Is he a soldier? Is he a hunter? Is he an intelligence operative? Or is he going to leave that life behind and go off to Montana or Alaska and do the things that he really wants to do and find peace? So I get to explore some of that. But there's like one thing he needs to do. He still needs the agency for one final thing. So that he can't do on his own. So he goes in. So I did all the research that I was doing back in 2006, 2007 when I thought I was going to go in the agency into that that side of the house, and I get to now take that research and apply it to him doing something that I thought I might do back then, and have him go through this training and go to the farm and go to Harvey Point and do all these things that guys do, and then move on and do some things at the agency just so we can get some information to go.
Yeah.
Get
One
the
more
final guidance
name on
list.
that
That's
to-do
right.
list,
That's right. People I want to kill. Yeah, exactly. Everybody has one of those, right? That was really the inspiration for the first book.
Right.
You know, you get to do some things in fiction that you can't do in real life.
Yeah.
So very therapeutic. That's why it comes
Yeah.
across as so real, because, you know, it is.
And the torture scene, I think,
Oh, that
really
was
well
we
done.
started talking
Thank you.
about this
Really
on the
well
podcast
done.
after we were talking
Yeah,
to you.
really
'cause
well done.
We went down the rabbit hole on just torture devices.
Yeah.
And what's the Raging Bull one?
oh no,
The Bronze Bull.
The Bronze Bull.
We started talking about the Bronze Bull.
Yeah.
Have you?
I don't know the bronze
heard
bull.
about
I don't
this
know. I'm going to
device?
Google it though after this.
So it's a big bronze bull, and it's got like a bellowing horn coming out of the mouth, and it's very simple. They just stuff somebody inside this, and then they light a fire underneath, and like you hear the bellows of this person as they're dying over the course of
because
hours.
they're screaming, but
It's like they're on a Traeger.
they're in a big bronze Traeger
Wow.
essentially. Yeah. But the research I did on it, because we talked about it, JT brought it up.
Yeah.
And so this, what they think this, because it's ancient Rome, what they think the Romans had done at that point was put this out as basically information operations, saying this is something that exists and we do this to prevent different.
Yeah, just a little propaganda scare tactic.
Yeah, this was like, hey, you commit these types of crimes, the Bronze Bull is waiting for you, and they can't prove that really existed.
Yeah.
So they think it could have been just quite literally fabricated by the empire in order to make sure that people just kept their shit in line.
Okay.
We got to continue to be resourced appropriately for this next fight.
Especially with our international partners in a combined environment. We can't do that over email and teleconferences. They have to be here. We have to fly with them to build those lessons learned so that we can provide that to the next, not exercise, the next operation in a joint combined environment.
Hey, that stuff works.
Yeah.
And I wanted my books from the beginning to be thoughtful violence is the way I think about it. Not just like, oh, he shot him in the leg again and asked him a question, shot him in the other leg. Like, I wanted it to be thoughtful violence and really put a lot of thought into these torture scenes and bring some history into it, because that's a part of the character and who he is. So a lot of people's favorite scenes are the torture scenes. And the fourth one has a really good one. I'm really excited about the fourth one. But the third one, I get a lot of people reaching out about that, the third book, torture scene.
So do you mind talking about that real quick? Because I'm super curious, like where your research, how are you thinking about
that one? I can't talk exactly about where I got that one, but I guess the best way to say it is that the person giving me that information had some ties to. Anyway, it was interesting.
It was interesting.
Yeah, so it's thoughtful.
Yeah,
so
it's thoughtful.
It's it's not typically something you see every day.
Right.
And then the other one from the third book, where I had piano wire around a guy's nuts, and on a rickety chair. So he's going to essentially get hung instead of having it around his neck. I just moved it down, down below.
So that one came from you.
Yeah,
you just
that
thought
one
about
came
that.
from me. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the first one, wrapping someone's guts around a tree so they're still alive. I got that from the Shining Path guerrilla movement in Peru.
Got it.
And I got that because I went to lunch with a guy who had been part of Iran Contra.
Right.
And it was one of those random invites to lunch where I'm like, that sounds good. And I went to lunch with this guy and he started talking about it. And I was like, no way. And it was just part of our conversation. And that might sound strange to people watching to have a conversation about someone wrapping their guts around a tree and getting eaten alive by the jungle. But it was very natural actually to talk about. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go research this a little more. So I looked into it, and it wasn't, the Shining Path didn't just make it up. Like they got it from indigenous people who got it from indigenous people.
Solid.
So it had been something that had been passed down over thousands of years. And it's a good one. And they used it to win hearts and minds. So it worked for them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use it and incorporate it into the book.
I forget. Do you remember who they used to set tires around people, and then where was that at? Was that in Africa?
I think they did it in Africa. They do it in Somalia. I think that's a rough one.
That's a rough one. Yeah. They stack some tires, light them on fire.
So you have this rubber.
So you have the rubber around you.
That's not cool.
It's not a cool one. It's definitely not a cool one.
Yeah, I feel like it's been played out though a little bit.
It has. Yeah, you're right.
So I need to get a little more. I got to go a little deeper. I got to go a little deeper each book and have it be a lot more
You got to get more
thoughtful.
sophisticated.
Yep.
Does your wife, does she read these, and do you allow her to read them before?
I do.
Sections of them, and does she give you feedback and stuff like that?
She does. Sometimes I hold off a little bit and pretend, oh, you're so busy. I'm just going to keep working on this a little more, and then wait a bit. But yeah, she does read them and she does give feedback. She's known me for a long time, since we're 18. So so she kind of knows where my head's at. Yeah. But
did she ever? Have you ever let her read one, or she's like, "This is amazing"? Does she ever come back? She's like, "This is amazing! Holy shit!
I think she's not really in those type of words, since we are married. So
exactly.
But she, in a way, she is impressed. I mean, she's known that I wanted to both be a SEAL and write since we were 18. So that's when. So it's not a surprise to her. And we've lugged books around the world. Like everywhere we've moved my library with us. Right. It's like, Churchill or somebody on a campaign for UK back in the day, having someone carry all these boxes or they're back in the day, chests of books, and mine are boxes with a PCS move. But there's a lot of them. So my library is fairly robust because I just love reading. I'm passionate about it. I'm a fan first of the genre and love writing in it. And I always knew that I would. So she wasn't too surprised. I think she would have been surprised if it wasn't good.
Right.
Yeah, if that makes sense. I don't know if that sounds too egotistical or not, but yeah. And then she probably would have told me, she'd be like, this isn't really any good. Maybe we need to reevaluate the choices and where we're investing all our time, energy, and effort right now into this thing with such a slim chance of success. But for me, that's all part of it as well. Just like going to special operations, like people telling you how hard it is and how the odds are stacked against you. And, what are you going to do when you don't make it through BUDS? Or what are you going to do when this book doesn't make it? Did you have an agent? Do you know? Like that sort of thing. Like, I don't know anything about all that. I'm just going to put all my energy and effort into training for BUDS and then into writing the best novel that I possibly can. Like that's where all my bandwidth goes. Yeah.
And what year did you come into the Navy? I forget.
96.
Okay. What year? Jocko was in the Navy in the 80s?
He was there in 91. I know. I think
91.
I think he was talking about somebody from the 80s in a BUDS class. He's BUDS class 180 something, or he's 176. I think it is. But anyway, but he was in the early 90s. Okay. So he had a couple of years on.
So he's like five years ahead of you, give or take.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we just did a podcast with Dudley.
Jocko and Dudley.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're at the Total Archery Challenge out here, and you guys are doing something amazing. I think this podcast will come out after you do it, and I'm going to try to help out the best I can by doing an adaptive shoot in Utah for veterans that have come back with amputees, missing arms and legs, maybe guys dealing with some post-traumatic stress and dealing with how to make this transition into a new life and finding mission and finding purpose. And, this will be amazing to do, but you've already done so much just by the example. And you do that to me too. Like I looked at you guys and I looked at other companies out there that you wouldn't typically look at from the publishing space trying to take lessons. But for me, I saw what you guys did, how you built out, essentially for me, it would be a readership. And for you guys, it's coffee drinkers and consumers of media and everything else you have going on. But I looked at that and said, how can I take a little bit of this, a slice of it, and make it authentic to me, but apply these lessons to the publishing space because no one's ever done that before. And same thing. And look at some Red Bull, look at Monster, look at Apple, how you get your iPhone, like all these little things like that, and just take a little sliver here and there and apply it. But you've done that for so many people to look at you guys and be like, wow, look what these guys have done. They got out, they looked at the space, they identified opportunity, and then they crushed it. And like that there's nothing more valuable than that. Of all the awesome stuff that you guys do, like that is the most impressive thing and the most valuable thing for somebody, not just leaving the military, but make any transition in life, seeing that and then going like, you know what, I can do this too. So it's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. It's funny because I think about it, and most of the time, like we were talking earlier, most of the time I'm like, we set the example by saying, well, if we can do it, then anybody can do it. Yeah. Right. But I
not entirely true, but it provides inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, not super high IQs rolling through here.
Hey, no, I think that's a big part of it, which is I'm more of I like to do things, and then if people are so inclined to do the same thing, then great. I don't like to shift into motivational speaker mode. That's not my thing. Obviously,
no, you don't have to because it's all by example, which is the best part of it.
I think for the company, and I'm glad. I'm super glad that we've been able to do that for I think I've heard that from a few different veterans out there where like, man, I looked at what you guys are doing. I was like, man, how can I do that? And I really like that aspect of the company as far as being able to set an example. You know, the archery stuff for us it's so important for the company because it's, you know, one, it's Black Rifle Coffee, right? So, you know, as we transition out of service and I established the coffee company with, you know, an homage to my service rifle. And then as we, you know, develop and evolve the company and we grow the company and we keep hiring more veterans and we do more nonprofits, we'll give close to $1 million back this year.
Nice.
In product and in direct contributions. And, you know, I think the cool thing about it is, you know, we're really concerned with how we can take the company and the success of the company and then shift it to how can we force multiply that success across the board,
Right.
You know, through entertain, inform, and inspire. That's what we do over here in media. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of things that we're doing, and it looks, for people that look at it from the social media perspective, they're like, those fucking dudes, all they're doing is just out there having fun.
Yeah.
Just having fun. It's like, yeah, but that is the point of life. And I've had to remind people this too, which is when you have a profession that you can enjoy and have fun in, like that's kind of the whole, like you get to win. Like you're winning at the game, right?
Yeah.
So if you, and Logan and I have talked about this so many times where I'm like, man, we sucked it up and we enjoyed what we did as in our previous profession. We've also eaten a lot of shit, right? And I've been self-absorbed into a violent profession, or at least a profession of violence, for a long period of time. And I'm not really interested in that anymore, right? I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in trying to figure out how we can plug in positivity into the community. You know, how do we directly inject our value proposition back in not only the veteran community, because that is what we're primarily concerned with, but then how does that inject and then propagate into the overall community? So how are we a force of positivity versus, you know, in the previous profession, I think at least I know I did, I started to dwell a lot on the negative aspects of things versus how do we really focus on the positive? So hearing that is really nice.
And you know, that example for other parts of the veteran community, you know, Jocko wrote a whole book on it, this idea of extreme ownership.
Yeah.
That's really all we do. Like when we think about the brand, like this is our baby. Like we care about this thing a lot. You know, same with your protagonist, James. It's like you care about that guy. Like you will make sure and you will work long hours to ensure that brand gets established and enhanced throughout its process. And that's really what, you know, if you were to come work at Black Rifle, like that is the single biggest ticket to success, I think, is just like caring about what you're doing, having the sense of ownership, like it's yours. You know what I mean? Because when something's yours, you care differently about it. And really it's just diving into that thing so much and putting enough of yourself into it that you really truly care about it and will do anything to see it succeed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's also that part that it's not, you didn't make it up. You didn't say, all right, how can we make some money? Let's identify something. Okay, there it is. Let's go after that. It's like, it's authentic to you, which is overused. I know, but there's not a better term for it. Because it's so, especially in today's world, like maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, for sure, 40 years ago, you could have picked something and made it successful because as leaders in companies, you're not out there. We're not there on social media. It didn't exist in 1950, 1955, and 1960. It was just a thing, a widget. You went in, you're trying to make it successful, whatever. But now it's you. And there's so much of people want to know about who's behind these companies and what are they really about. And that authenticity piece is now so important where it wasn't in 1960 or 1965 because there weren't those ways for people to connect with you, to engage with you, to see you on a daily basis, putting something out there, which is essentially your storefront. And it's just an amazing time to be. There's a lot of opportunity there. And you guys saw that, and people that do it right, like you guys, by keeping it true and real and authentic and raw, which is what I do with writing, because that's all I can do. I don't know how to do it any other way. I wouldn't know how to do anything in life any other way than that.
Yeah.
But I've seen people might stumble but they're gonna get caught these days. It's like it's gonna be obvious that it's not real, it's not authentic, it's not them, it's not raw, and people recognize that and go elsewhere.
There's a lot of that out there, right? It's the inauthenticity where people are more exploitive in nature, and I'm obviously we're a for-profit company, right? And we have to run a profitable company for us to continue to hit our goals and objectives. And a big part of the goals and objectives is being a positive influence and example for the community, right?
Yeah.
That's a big goal. When you start to define that, and then as you start to look at your goals and objectives directly related to those things, you have to run a profitable company, and you have to scale it because why? Why do you have to scale it? To scale it because we want to hire more veterans. We want to create more opportunities for veterans to own coffee shops.
Right.
We want to do all these things. Well, in order to do all those things, you have to have a bigger company. You have to create more revenue. You have to create more profit, because a lot of people are like, well, why are you scaling the company? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Because we have to be an example. We have to be the bad news bearers example to everybody that thinks that they can't fucking do it. And if we ring a bell in the stock market and publicly trade the company at $1 billion valuation and in 6 or 7 fucking years from starting a company, I think that inspires a whole generation of veteran entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial veterans, right? To go out and say, fuck man, if those knuckleheads can do that, if there's like Evan, Logan, Matt, and that fucking weirdo Jared can go make a bunch of stupid videos and do that, holy shit, dude, imagine what I can do, because I'm fucking 10 times smarter than those dudes. And and that's all this, the point of this entire exercise, right? It's like, man, what gets me up at 4:30 in the morning, what puts me to bed at fucking midnight or whenever it is, it's it's solving the problem, and more importantly, it's making sure that we're solving the problem correctly in a way that's it's ethically acceptable to the community. And a lot of people, I think, I don't know if this is too big of a rabbit hole, but a lot of people are like, well, you guys are just fucking raking it in. It's like, man, what you do with your company's profits, and a true capitalist, right? A true capitalist is not necessarily somebody, a profiteer is about chasing profit to line their pockets. The capitalist is different. They want to build infrastructure. They want to create opportunities. They want to grow a company in a different way. Right. So when you're building companies and ecosystems and kind of redefining corporate landscape, that's different. There's a whole different side of businesses out there. And I think that business sometimes gets a negative image because they're like, well, you guys are profiteers. It's like, I'm not a profiteer. I'm a capitalist. And I build structures and systems and
I like that. You got some Ayn Rand going there. You got some Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged in there.
It's completely different. So a lot of people, I think they look at chasing dollars, right? They want to chase dollars, and I'm all for it. I say, great, but what are you going to do with those dollars? Because it's not going to make your life better if all you're going to do is look at your numbers and your accounts every day and say, holy shit, how fucking popular and successful am I at doing this? Like, this system that we built and the ecosystem that we built is directly translates to what we do with people's dollars. And when I tell people, I'm like, vote with your dollar, go out and vote with your dollar. And so when we have 260 people in the company and we have above a 50% veteran hiring rate, and we give $1 million back to veteran nonprofits and initiatives, awesome. And we fucking do, we put our money where our mouth is. Like, you're creating billions of impressions on Entertain, Inform, and Inspire. We're out here throwing arrows in the middle of fucking nowhere. We're flying, adaptive athletes out. We're hosting fucking tournaments. We're encouraging people for positive use of firearms, discouraging bad behavior in politicians. These are all the things that are great. I'm not driving a fucking Maserati, Jack. You know what I mean? I'm not driving a Maserati. I don't give a fuck about owning a Ferrari. You know what I care about? Having a great company, great people.
Awesome. And that's why it's going the way it is.
Yeah.
And employing, future generations of veterans.
That's it.
My little exercise when I'm, not in the trenches and thick of things is how can I make moves right now so that in 20 or 30 years we become the flow for people to generate careers. Like I don't want vets to come in, you know, this on your resume is super awesome. You know, if you do 2 years with us, you know, that'll get you a lot of credit moving forward into the real. But I want to generate careers for people. I want people to work for Black Rifle for 30 years. So how do we generate that system? You know, I think it was April or something. We did a big hiring initiative. Hired 5 vets in like 2 weeks or something like that. Like that's where we're trying to get to the point where we're teaching people how to fish, not just giving them a fish, you know? And that purpose to be attached to something like that is like, that's all I need, you know?
Yeah. Well, where do you guys think it came from where people look and veterans look at themselves as, or the prevailing wisdom is that you had to go out there and show that it's possible? Whereas we had guys come back from World War II. You know what they did when they got home? They got to work and they built us into the country we are today from 1945, you know, into the 70s. Like those guys were business leaders. They were entrepreneurs. They went out there and created companies and they crushed it and made us the most powerful country in the world. And then at some point along the way, maybe it was Vietnam, who knows what it was, but through media, through movies, books, whatever else, the popular impression and the popular culture started to look at veterans as wounded, regardless of whether they were actually missing an arm or a leg or not, but as not being able to be successful when they left military service. So somewhere in there from World War II up until mid-70s, there was a shift.
Yeah, it wasn't respect, it became pity.
Exactly.
And that we have to shift that focus.
So it's a different deal. When you go back and you look at those business leaders that came out from World War II, I mean, it's surprising. And you didn't even realize that they were, because it was just, well, so many people served. And then you go look at someone's bio who retired in 1980 or something like that. You look back, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy was on the beach in Normandy. And I go back and I look at authors and I'm looking at guys, you know, I do these posts where I talk about different authors that inspired me throughout my life. And I go back and I do a little research and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like you just talked about Louis L'Amour. But I look at these guys, I'm like, oh, Jack Higgins. Oh my gosh, no way. I cannot believe this guy was in World War II or whatever. Sometimes an actor that you like that passes away, you look back and see that and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this guy was in the Pacific campaign and he was on all these islands. Oh my gosh, this guy stormed 10 different islands under enemy machine gun fire. And then he came back and was in Hollywood and you never really knew.
Never knew.
But it's somewhere along the line, something shifted, but you're shifting it back with what you're doing. And I hope that, you know, guys like Jocko and hopefully, you know, some of the others of us that are out there doing positive things with our platforms, are creating a different impression and the correct impression, that's not influenced by this popular culture from the mid-70s up to today that we're wounded and need pity. Hey, it's time to get to work. We're going to come back from our military service and we're going to crush it. That's what we're going to do.
I think there's been a lot of people too, and this could be completely fucking inaccurate and total bullshit, but I think there's been a lot of people, and this is one thing that I see all the time, which is, you know, the homeless person on the side of the road that says, you know, veteran, please help. And I know, like, when I'm driving, like 99 out of 100 of those guys are not veterans. Like they're not veterans. And you know why? Because I can look at them and it's like, bro, come on, man. You're like 50 years old. You weren't in Vietnam. You weren't even alive yet, dude. Like, why are you wearing a Vietnam hat? Or I've stopped, I don't know how many times they're like, hey, so what unit were you in? What do you mean? What do you mean? Or whatever, right? And it's like, it's kind of like, it's a joke. So I think there's been a lot of people in the past several decades that have quite literally stolen valor and gone out and said, I'm a veteran, please help me, because it's easy to pull at the heartstrings of people. But most of the veterans that I know are not looking for a handout. You know, they're fucking ass kicking, type A motivational motherfuckers that are like, hey man,
looking for purpose.
I'm doing it. Like I'm doing it. Nobody's standing in my way. You know, now, do I know guys and if I had a hard time transitioning out of the mill and finding purpose, finding a new mission? Yes. But those guys are I think they're exceptional, obviously, because of our backgrounds and where we come from. And there's a wide variety of people that are constantly transitioning out of the mill. But I think, to your point, you had a whole generation of people that fought in World War II. Everybody was a collective effort, right? It's a collective effort. Now we have less than 1% of the entire population that ever, you know, steps out the door. And then you have a minority percentage of those people that served that have actually served in combat and direct combat, right? So, you know, for us, I think, as a collective, especially the combat veteran, collective community as a whole, we do have a responsibility to one another, to include, you and everybody. So as you're saying, like, hey, what we're doing, I'm like, no, what we're doing, like what you're doing, what Jocko's doing, what, Dudley's doing and Andy's doing, like everybody going out and just fucking saying, no, I'll be a success. I'm just going to go out and do it. You guys can watch, and you can, through social media, you can watch. I'll set some type of an example. And that's one of the big things with starting it 6 years ago, and working through this for several years. We've really focused this in the last couple of years. How do we make sure that we're shifting the platform, making sure the platform is injecting positive value into people's lives, not just these are funny, because they are. Like we love making funny videos, and we love making fucking stupid videos. Like we love it. We legitimately enjoy making really fucking dumb shit. We love it. It's super fun. It is, but it's a process. It's still work. Like it's not like you just wake up out of bed in the morning and go, "Hey, Logan, let's make some dumbass shit that's going to be seen a couple million times."
Especially when we're so competitive, like all of us. And then you have that, like, we have to constantly one up ourselves. Like we can't be taking a step backwards. So like, the process takes a little bit longer now. We have to have a little bit more money flow into it sometimes. And like, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes.
You just pull out an iPhone and say, go blow that up over there. Oh, awesome. We post it. Like,
And when you make it look easy, that means you're doing something halfway decent.
Exactly.
And halfway right? So looking at what you're doing and looking, it's so funny because, reading and listening to your books over the last couple of years, I'm like, fuck, man, this guy's really good. This guy's really good. I could probably do that. No,
you probably can. Just gotta do the work.
Doubt it.
Sitting down and doing the work and studying the craft and being passionate about it.
Just a lifetime of work. Yeah, you probably could do it. Yeah, a lifetime of work.
That does help.
20 years, 30 years of just thinking about it. Yeah. No,
that definitely helps, having a connection to those novels and being so passionate about them, having read them so early on in the 80s, and then continue having read new stuff all the way up through today. Instead of just waking up one day and saying, "Oh, I think I like to write a book. Maybe I should go back and read a little bit, some things that people have written in the past," and kind of reading them, being distracted over here by the kids or whatever else. Like, no, I was like at my house under the covers with a flashlight, reading David Morrell, Brotherhood of the Rose in like 1985 or whatever. And like, I have great memories of doing that, or being outside at the house trying to find a quiet place and reading these books growing up. And I just have such fond memories of doing that, but they were teaching me how to write. It wasn't just me escaping into them. I was learning some military stuff, which is what I thought was the main value of it. But what they were really teaching me was how to write, and teaching me what I liked, what I didn't, what worked, what didn't, and then allowing me to take those and apply them now, today, doing what I'm doing. So I feel very fortunate that I was introduced to reading at a very early age from my mom, that I absolutely love it. I'm passionate about it, and I'm a fan first, and all that work. Because it would probably be very difficult to just hop in today and then go back and read Last of the Breed, go back and read Brotherhood of the Rose, go back and read The Spy Who Came from the Cold. Like, understand that history. It helps to have lived it.
We are so fucking excited, and not only like, we're so happy just the fact that, being connected to you, being connected to what you're doing with your books. Like, it's literally our privilege to just plug in however we can.
Thank you, brother.
Like, do what we can. I mean,
appreciate it.
It's a real value proposition back to the guys that drink Black Rifle coffee, that listen to FRA. Like, Jack's not giving us, a couple bucks on the table by any stretch of the imagination. We just legitimately love what you're doing, everything you got going on. If you haven't read one of his books, you got to go, you've got to just Google Jack Carr, pick up whichever one you want, because they're all good. In sequence, if you want to start, you're going to start with Terminal List, and then you're going to work your way through. I highly recommend doing that, because they're amazing books. And obviously, you're right up the road. So Jack's going to be on these podcasts all the time. So
awesome.
Let's go shoot some arrows.
Let's go shoot some arrows. Yeah.
Let's do it. Awesome.